Jay Bilas joining us, the ESPN college basketball analyst. Did you watch what happened at the Academy Awards last night, Jay?
I just saw it on social media, and there were two things that popped out to me. One was in the sports context. The only thing I could think of was Jim Everett going after Jim Rome. Actually,
Oh,
that was on ESPN Air, I think, when
yeah,
Jim Rome had a TV show on ESPN2, I think. And then the other was when David Stern almost took a swing at you during the NBA
that
draft.
is true.
I think he really if he was within reach, that would have been a slap.
Good call with Romy and Jim Everett, Chris Everett. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so ridiculous. We don't know that professional athletes can kick our ass anytime they want to. We know.
You are 15th in our bracket challenge. Your final four: Arizona, Gonzaga, Kentucky, and Wisconsin. How do you explain yourself, Jay?
Well, there's one area where I was right, Dan, and that is before the tournament started, I had said that there was nobody truly powerful this year like we had last year with Gonzaga and Baylor. So I felt like there was going to be some volatility, but I think I said there were 8 teams only that could win this thing, and that was it. And there are a bunch of teams that can get through their bracket, get to an Elite Eight. That can happen. Now, did I see St. Peter's coming? No. And would I have if they replayed that, if they put that back on the board, Kentucky St. Peter's, and I knew the outcome, I still might take Kentucky because it seems so crazy that would happen. But I really believe that our Sweet 16 this year was 13 power conference teams. Gonzaga and Houston both in the Final Four last year, and the only real little guy was St. Peter's. And so while we were celebrating St. Peter's, and we'll always remember that and always celebrate it. You know, the idea that that anybody can win this thing, anybody can win a game, and anybody can get through a bracket if something happens in your bracket. But winning the whole thing is a different ball game, and I think we see that in the Final Four that we have.
Yeah, because I've said this before that we sort of love those stories. We love the madness, but it's really hard to win 6 consecutive games unless you play in a conference where you're playing tough opponents every single night and you're going to go against different styles. St. Peter's a wonderful team, and they were sort of creating, the atmosphere that you had to adapt to them. But, eventually you're going to run into these teams. I mean, North Carolina, that's a damn good team, and I think we missed the headline when they beat North Carolina or beat Duke at Duke with Coach K's last game, because I came away going, nobody's talking about North Carolina's performance. They're talking about how could Duke lose at home. For those who haven't seen North Carolina, how would you explain that?
Well, as you know, they have a new coach this year, Hubert Davis. His first year as a head coach, but he's 50 years old and has been in the game forever, and he's got crazy experience in basketball. And I think early on, they had a different way of playing than Carolina's played in the past. It's more a spread offense, a lot of ball screens, pick and roll stuff, pick and pop stuff. And they've got a stretch 4 in Brady Manick, who transferred in from Oklahoma, who knocks down threes. So it's not the traditional Carolina team that pounds you inside with 2 traditional low post guys, and they pound the glass. And people seem to forget that Carolina, they got into the tournament last year, but Wisconsin blew their doors off in the first round. I mean, they beat them by like 30. So it wasn't like Hubert Davis inherited this great team. So early on, they struggled. And when they played really good teams like Purdue, Tennessee, Villanova, they got beat bad, like 20-point losses. And at one point in their losses, they were giving up over 90 points a game. And it was probably toward the end of January, Dan, where they started to bow up and fight back. And I think Hubert Davis, I remember him telling me this before that last Duke game in Cameron, Coach K's last game in Cameron. He said he had told the team, I think it was some sort of Bible verse. You can tell how much I'm reading the Bible these days. But he said we have to plant our feet, stand our ground, and fight. And that's who they've been ever since. And they're very good. They're not playing like an 8 seed. I know that. And they're formidable because they have size. And they made St. Peter's look, frankly, like a MAC team, which they didn't look like against Purdue and Kentucky and Murray State. They looked a lot better than that. And Carolina made them look pretty average. I mean, they didn't even score 50 points in that game. Didn't even threaten to score 50. Carolina took them apart. It wasn't even close.
I thought maybe that final game at Cameron Indoor for that Duke team the moment was too big for them. And maybe they didn't understand the enormity of it. And it, you're almost giving 100 points up to North Carolina. It feels like they're growing up right before our very eyes, where they do understand the magnitude of this, that they know the next game could be the last game for Coach K. Because, man, in the final 5 minutes of some of these games, they hit big shots. Coach K, you could hear the emotion, like he's watching them grow up before his very eyes.
Yeah, it's there. There's part of this, Dan, that's kind of hard to explain, because I don't think it was just the last game against North Carolina. I mean, commentators like me had been saying earlier in the year, this is an old school defensive team, Duke defensive team, getting out in passing lanes, disrupting. And, you look at their numbers and you go, they don't force any turnovers at all, really. They were a very low turnover forcing team. I mean, they're good defensively, but they weren't great. And especially toward the end of the year, I mean, they got taken apart by North Carolina in the second round, in that last game. And then they went to the ACC tournament. And I don't think they played very well there at all. Like, they beat Syracuse and Miami, and then they got taken apart pretty good by Virginia Tech, which Carolina did too. But they didn't look good. And I didn't have them advancing past Texas Tech in the bracket because of how they looked and how I felt they were playing. And I know I wasn't alone in that. So your point about growing up before our eyes, I think they probably did some growing up in practice when they got back from Brooklyn from the ACC tournament. But they're playing like, if you were blindfolded the whole year and dropped into the postseason only in the NCAA tournament, you just watch tournament games. I would say they've looked the best of any team in the tournament. Like, nobody's played consistently as well as they have through the 4 games that have been played. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to carry over to next week. And honestly, I can't imagine, how all the baggage of Duke Carolina playing in the semifinal and all the attention that's going to go with that is going to affect play and affect the winner in the championship game, because there's one of those two teams is going to the title game. And I wouldn't mind being Kansas right now saying, you guys go have your little Hatfield McCoy match and go to as many overtimes as you want. We'll play the JV game and see you on Monday night, and quietly go into that. Because how many times have we seen this where we think the de facto champions playing in one semi, the winner that's going to win the thing, or one gets more attention, and then a team out of the other bracket winds up winning.
Well, it's like the ALCS when the Red Sox in 04 beat the Yankees, and then we thought, well, they're, of course, going to win the World Series, which they did against the Cardinals, but we thought that was the World Series. We're talking to Jay Bilas, who's joining us on the program. I have to admit, I tuned in during commercial break, and I saw the commercial with Spike Lee and Barkley's in there and Samuel L. Jackson, and then it's Jim Nantz with the bald head. I thought it was you for a second. Do you take that as a compliment?
I think Jim should.
You got a nice noggin. See, I don't. If I go bald, it's not going to look good. But
I think it would look good.
No,
I think you're undervaluing the power of the dome. And I tried to hang on to it for as long as I could, and I never got to any comb over stage or anything like that, but tried to keep a little stubble up there. And then I finally said, you know what? I'm bald and I got to live with it. And I didn't want to have the wraparound hair that old guys do. Yeah. When you're completely completely bald up top, but you got a little wraparound thing, whatever they call that. I didn't want to do that. So I don't care. Clearly, I don't care what I look like anymore. And my wife claims she's not going anywhere. So I figured, what the hell? And it is easier. Like, it's so much easier than it used to be.
But if you could have a full head of hair, but you were 5'9".
Oh, I'd take that in 2 seconds for 2 reasons. One, because hair is great. I mean, I really enjoyed hair. And I still have it in a baggie in my bathroom drawer, and I look at it every once in a while. But the other part is I'm 6'8" tall, and finding pants is not an easy thing. I would like to be able to go into a store and just get a pair of pants, but every time I walk into a store and look at pants, they're like, nope, not going to happen. And so I'd like to be able to get a pair of pants.
I would just wear your warm-ups from Duke.
Those don't fit anymore. Those were a little tight back in the day. Ooh. And my kid wore them for Halloween one year, and it was grotesque. I can't believe the crap we wore, like the little short shorts and all that stuff. It was not. It wasn't a good look.
Did you ever get punched on the floor?
I got elbowed a bunch. I don't know that I ever. No, I never got punched. I did. Rick Barnes reminds me of this all the time. We played against George Mason my freshman year, and a guy named Carlos Yates, who I think at the time was leading the nation in scoring, elbowed me in the face and knocked my front 2 teeth out. And because it was over the Christmas break, I couldn't get them replaced right away. So when my teammates and I would go out, the drinking age was 18 back then in North Carolina, where we'd go out at night during the holiday break. All my teammates would introduce me to good-looking girls. Like, hey, meet my friend Jay. And I'm like, really? You know, and I look like a hockey player. It was really bad.
You didn't meet your wife then, did you?
I met her after that. After I got my teeth fixed, I met my wife. And but I had hair back then. I had a lot going for me.
You had good hair.
I had great hair.
Yeah.
It was spectacular.
Yeah, it was. You go back to the White Shadow when you make your cameo, and that guy killed back then. He slayed back then. Surfer hair.
Yeah, I don't really call it a cameo, Dan. It was really a starring role. I played Larson of Oak Ridge High, where Reese transferred to Oak Ridge, an all-white high school. And it was really moving when he took his uniform off at the end and went back to Carver while we were warming up. And I thought all those guys, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I thought all the actors in that were around our age. I was like 16 maybe and when we did that. And all of them were like smoking during breaks. They were all like in their 30s. And none of them could play dead. The only guy that could play was the actor that played Coolidge. All the other guys were actors only and could not play at all.
Great to catch up with you as always. And you'll be calling the games ESPN International?
Yes, I've been working on all my different languages, and my NIL deals in Latvia are coming in. You wouldn't believe it. It's unbelievable.
I'm very proud of you, Jay. You've come a long way. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Dan.
That's Jay Bilas, ESPN college basketball analyst. He'll be calling the games for ESPN International.